extending our warmest welcome to the honorable guests, Vice Chancellor Sir, faculties and students to the seminar on hydrodiplomacy and approach to regional cooperation in South Asia, organized by the Asia Foundation, Sikkim University, IIT Guwahati and Pondicherry University. I welcome all the esteemed dignitaries to the stage.
In this context, the continued engagement with the topic becomes ever so relevant, and hence the seminar comes to us at the right time. The Asia Foundation is a non-profit international development organization committed to improving lives and expanding opportunities across Asia and the Pacific. Informed by decades of experience and deep local expertise, their work across the region is focused on good governance, women's empowerment and gender equality, inclusive economic growth, environment and climate action, and regional and international relations. Headquartered in San Francisco with an office in Washington, D.C., the Asia Foundation works through its network of 18 country offices across Asia and the Pacific. Working with public and private partners, the Foundation receives funding from a diverse group of bilateral and multilateral development agencies, foundations, corporations, and individuals. We are delighted to be a part of the endeavor of the Foundation. As we gather here today, we are not merely attending an event, we are embarking on a journey filled with possibilities, inspiration, and shared experiences. This event is a testament to the power of unity and collaboration, where people from diverse backgrounds and walks of life come together to celebrate, learn, and grow. We are honored to have the presence of dignitaries and experts of the field with us. Ms. Nandita Barua, Country Representative of the Asia Foundation, New Delhi, Professor Mahendra Lama of Jawaharlal Nehru University, and our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University, Professor Gurmeet Singh. Before we dive into the exciting program that awaits us, I would like to take a moment to invite Professor Subramaniam Raju to give the welcome address.
On behalf of Center for South Asian Studies, Pondicherry University, I warmly welcome you all for the seminar on hydrodiplomacy and approach to regional cooperation in South Asia. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, Professor Mahendra Lama, former Vice Chancellor of Sikkim University and presently Professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Madam Ms. Nandita Barwa, Country Representative at Asia Foundation, New Delhi, delegates, faculty members, scholars, students and friends. Let me at the outset place on record our gratitude to the Honorable Vice Chancellor Honorable Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University for being with us to give inaugural address despite Professor's busy schedule. We were able to have his presence over here. So thank you so much, sir, for your presence here. And also, we are also grateful to Professor Mahendra Lama, who is also advisor to Asia Foundation, as well as also is a well-known scholar, and also he was instrumental in supporting our activities at Center for South Asian Studies on various academic activities. This seminar is very, very important because the situation which prevails across the world regarding water security, which makes us to debate on various issues, particularly on water security. According to United Nations, 2 billion people will live with water scarcity by 2025. Nearly 80% of the world's population confront a water-related biodiversity risk. More than 40% of the world's people live in 263 river basins that straddle international borders, and precisely it is happening in South Asia, where some of the rivers are not sharing only by one country. There are few countries which are sharing water with the same river. There the problem arises in South Asia. We need to look at how this one river is shared by many countries, how it is going to be seen by us, either it's a confrontation or cooperation in the context of South Asia. And transboundary rivers contain 60% of the world's river flows, and for two-thirds of them are no agreements on water sharing. And again, it is related to South Asia, where India and China are still have agreement on water sharing. So that is another way of looking at. But also we have, when you look at in South Asian context, whether can we talk about hydro diplomacy in South Asia without bringing China? When China is not part of South Asia, how do we now look at, because the water originates, most of the water sharing by the countries in South Asia originates from Tibet, and unfortunately Tibet has become part of China. Now how do you look at, China is a upper riparian state, whereas India is a lower riparian state. And on the other hand, India is a upper riparian state when it is sharing water with Pakistan and Bangladesh. Now precisely looking at India is a middle riparian state, and it has a different role to play while talking about sharing water. So this is the middle riparian state is having on one side concerns, on the other hand it is having a responsibility. So in that context, how do we look at whether India is a water hegemon or hydro hegemon, or China is a hydro hegemon, or what are the concerns of the downstream concerns like Bangladesh and Pakistan. So we have this problem of absolute territorial integrity versus territorial sovereignty. So the clash between these two concerns are going to be a big problem when we are talking about water sharing in South Asia. And Bangladesh criticizes India, India criticizes China, Pakistan criticizes India. Of course, there is agreement between India and Pakistan in this treaty, but still now the recent debate where India is looking for revising the treaty. So how do we understand this kind of problem when water is not necessarily to be seen only access to water, but there are other issues related to water security, like poverty, like food security, like the energy security, like climate change. So all these issues are related to water security, thereby it is very important for us to debate and discourse on issues of water security. We are very, very thankful to Asia Foundation for the constant encouragement and support extended to us for the past 2-3 years, and particularly during COVID, they really helped us to have academic activities through online. I think that is something very important for us to look at, because COVID period is something where we are not allowed to do anything, but then they came to us and they came to our risk, rather I can say that they helped us to conduct these academic activities at Center for South Asian Studies. And we are once again thankful to Asia Foundation for the financial support extended to us. And also this is the first seminar. I hope Asia Foundation has extended support for Pondicherry University to organize on physical mode, and we are very grateful to Madam Nandita Badwa. And also when we look at this coordination between the countries, how we are going to look at whether this is somewhere, whether China, if China is not going to, the way China is looking at, China is penetrating into different parts of the world, whether China come into picture when we are talking about hydro diplomacy in South Asia. I think probably we have to look at, if minus China, whether we can think about what are the alternatives or what are the future scenario in South Asia. I think probably we will discuss these issues in the next 2 days. And I once again welcome you all for this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next up, I invite Professor Gurmeet Singh to hand over the books by Professor Adluli Subramaniam Raju to Ms. Nandita Barua ma'am. I invite you to receive the works on behalf of the Asia Foundation.
morning and a warm welcome to everybody. Honorable Vice Chancellor Gurmeet Singh Ji, Professor Rama, Professor Subramaniam Raju, professors and faculty from Sikkim University who are here, and students and faculty from IIT Guwahati, and of course students and faculty of Pondicherry University and the Umisark Center. A big thank you to all of you for having come all this way in this journey of exploring this paradigm of hydrodiplomacy together. A lot has already been actually said by Professor Raju when he was talking about what is it that this particular area entails when we talk about it, both from an academic and a policy and an operational space. Now, I'm just going to take a step back to bring you on board in terms of what set us on this path. As it was adequately explained, I think the foundation, basically we are an organization which works in 18 countries across Asia, which is all of Asia, including the Indo-Pacific. Our most recent offices have opened in the Pacific Islands. We have a regional office in Fiji, Suva, which looks at Solomon, Marshall, PNG, and a bunch of other islands which are there. And as an organization which works in multiple countries, we are recognizing multiple challenges that are interlinked globally. We saw a lot of discussion on that in the G20 recently, and we also realized, and I think the globe is realizing, certain problems and challenges may seem like they are very national or country bound in nature, but the solutions and the the challenges that go into unraveling them cannot be done by one country. The biggest one that is facing us today is climate and environment, and water governance is a part of that. There is no one single country who can be a solution. Even simple things like pollution in Delhi, which I face a lot because I come from there, we are masked up right from October till I think January. We do realize that what happens in Delhi falls across to Bangladesh and to Nepal and our other neighboring countries, even from the air and the and the water that people are drinking and breathing, and vice versa. What happens in the upper riparian and how the water bodies are treated in the mountains impact how it is being used, and also how it is being accessed by those in the lower riparian. So, for the foundation, we work on water climate issues across our country offices. Just like the water governance and hydro diplomacy program that we started in India, we have a program in Mekong, which is called the Mekong River Management Program in Southeast Asia, based out of Bangkok, but looking at Mekong from the perspective of Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, for sure. Equally contested, equally challenging. Also because the big elephant in the room, which we talked about, China, has a much larger role there than it visibly has so much here. Not that it doesn't here in South Asia, but as we all know in Southeast Asia, that role is much more strongly articulated than anywhere. Having said that, what are we trying to achieve? This journey that we embarked on with these 3 universities started when we were actually having a very national program in the foundation. We were working with the Jal Shakti Commission at that time to really look at, basically cross-boundary water. And one of the rivers that we decided to agree to study deeply, including others, the contestations on rivers in India is a story that all of you probably know. It's forever. There is contestations on river, on the flow of the Ganga, on the flow of the Yamuna. Recent floods in Delhi, Haryana left water, so we got flooded. No, you didn't silt in Delhi, so you got flooded. But it's pointing fingers at one another, goes on and on. So when we were doing this program, we were actually looking at Kosi, which is, as you know, is a highly contested river basin between India and Nepal. Has a lot to do with why it floods, who it impacts, who pays compensation, how many people die, who is responsible for the cattle, what embankments, you name it, the plethora of it. And in that study, at that point, we had a researcher called Dr. Sandeep Bhardwaj who was doing it for us. What we realized is that the government of India opened up the archives of Kosi, going right back to the 30s. They were recently opened and the archives were opened up. So we started digging into an archives. I'm an historian by profession. I'm student of history in my MA and MPhil and a political economy student. So it was of interest. It was, to me, very revealing what we found about how human interface with water that is your bureaucrats, your technocrats, your politicians, how the human interfaces water is completely absent of understanding the interplay of water between those who live by the side of the water basins. You know, Kosi was a point in case. Every document that we pulled out on Kosi negotiations from 37 pre-independence till most recent ones just went to prove the point that anything that was discussed and negotiated in Kosi never really took into account how Kosi impacted those who most used it, accessed it, needed it, and dependent on their livelihoods for that. That is the entire river basin population of Kosi, upstream and downstream. Never. It did not take into account what some of the actions that were done and proposed, thankfully some were not done, but done and proposed, impacted the natural flow of that river, how it impacted the ecosystem, the ecology, and that in turn, how it impacted further. One small example, on the Indian side of the Kosi, of any river, you will all know that when we started flooding, our initial response was embankments. So embankments were created, and there's a politics behind embankments, which we realized. There is a budget that comes from embankment. There is cement and mortar made in embankment. There are people who are responsible for constructing embankment. When we started talking about the embankment and whether it has helped Kosi or not with the people on the Indian side of the border, right through, the population there said these embankment to, and I'll just say in Hindi, ये तो बहुत ख़राब कर दिए हैं पूरे सिस्टम को, क्योंकि अब जब पानी आता है और बाढ़ आती है तो पानी का पड़ाव इन अंदर नहीं सीप कर सकता, तो embankment की levees तोड़ के बहुत अंदर तक के जाती है, and the flood plain has increased. The area that's flooding has become larger and larger. Local knowledge tells you not to do this. Political and bureaucratic action tells you to do this. So the disconnect between the two made us think, where is it that we are making the fault line? And the response also was that we can't be just in one organization. Unfortunately, the research was so, to us at that point, was so challenging in what came out, and without wanting to curb the intellectual independence of the researcher, we had to allow the researcher to write and analyze what he saw as independently. But for us, it didn't make prudent sense to then publish the whole research at that point, but as an institution. And I take the responsibility for that. But we, of course, allowed the researcher to publish it and go ahead and do what he wanted with it. Extremely challenging, because it really pointed some deep fingers at everybody involved on both sides of the border on the mismanagement of a river gone completely awire and the political impact of that. Having said that, we realized that unless we change this discourse and understanding, I don't think we will have a lasting solution to any of the water-related climate challenges that we are facing, or the impact of climate on water, which got us to really work with Professor Mahendra Lama to help design a course. And why with universities? Because the foundation strongly believes that if you want a policy change or a change in the way anything is governed, it has to be backed by substantive research and more voice with which you can validate what you are suggesting. I come from the non-government sector, and I can tell you that sometimes as NGOs, we tend to put the policy before the research. I think that's where we fail. That's why years and years of non-governmental action in a lot of things is you put the policy before the research. We are in a hurry. So, ye change karo, ye karo. What are you backing it with? Unless it is backed with a solid base of knowledge, not by the stakeholders that I work with, but by the broader range of stakeholders, I don't think I, as a development sector partner, has any moral authority to propose a change. So that's what our objective is, to really independently get universities to look at water governance, independently to bring out studies and research that point to some of the challenges that water governance is facing, not just in India, but globally, but also in South Asia. And therefore, if these are the challenges that your research is throwing out, that your understanding is throwing out, what needs to change at the governance level? What needs to change at the operational level? We are hoping to create that voice, create that change by really enabling these partnerships. So which is why we are here today, and I think we have done 3 years now of running the course in 3 universities. I'm sure there are a lot of lessons learned. A lot of people, independent of university faculty, have contributed to these studies. We have had guest lecturers from different parts during the COVID, as Professor Raju was pointing out. We've had guest lecturers write papers for us. Jayanta Basu is also here, has contributed to our thinking in a big way in that. Professor Lawrence Prabhakar, who was with the university but is here today, has contributed in a big way. Professor Sebastian, Professor Selvin, Newton, all of you who have been teaching the course have contributed. So in the next 2 days and a half, we hope to hear from all of you based on your own independent teaching and the students who have taken that classroom learning to more field research as to what is the story that is unfolding in South Asia on water governance, and how do we therefore propose change if we want to propose change, and where do we go from there. So it's with that objective that we are bringing all of us together here, and I'm delighted to be a part of this process, and the foundation remains committed to moving this forward, not just within India, and like I said, like Professor Raju aptly said, what we do is going to impact countries both as us as an upper riparian and countries below us as lower riparian, us as recipient of certain faulty management, and us also as people who have the right to or the space to right the wrong that has happened. So hopefully that's where we will move, and I'm delighted that we've been in this journey together, and I want to really say a special thanks to Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, who has been extremely supportive of this, and thank you, sir, for holding this, and I hope that we'll have a meaningful conversation and design the next phase of where we go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's an honor to invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurmeet Singh, Pondicherry University, to give the inaugural address. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, friends, and thank you very much for inviting me here. Our very old academic dear friend, Professor Mahinder Lama, with whom I have been interacting for a good length of time now, Mrs. Nandita Barua of the Asia Foundation, our own Professor Subramaniam Raju, all other colleagues sitting here, and my dear young students, young researchers, I think who will really make a difference to such seminars. When this topic of hydro diplomacy came before us, Mr. Lama wanted a course to be designed, and I said yes, we will be very open to that, and we did that, and the course is having a fair bit of success, but eventually it becomes an absolute success when our young minds will start taking part in it, and they'll start researching in this. This is where we are now embarking on, and they must be wondering, what is it that we are talking about hydro diplomacy? How suddenly it has come up? Now if you just trace back the history, there was a time, I'll start from probably 47 onward, when water wasn't that important. The naval forces of the countries were there, but then they were never important. I do not know how many of you have bothered about to see what was our Navy in 1947 and what way we have traversed to develop our Navy into one of the finest forces now. Even a sailor in Indian Navy is a very technically expert person. He will be able to tell you everything about the way computer programming is done in respect of naval warfare. So that's the way we have advanced. But we have come a long way in naval forces development. Now if you look at it, why development in these forces? Because things have changed. Things are not what they were in 47. So see overall the outlook of the countries towards sea, contributions, relations, managements, movements, the resources, everything has changed, and every country had started realizing that this is very important. That is why probably you may not be knowing that there is an office called Chief Hydrographer's Office, which is located in Dehradun. It was never heard of, and they are constantly serving in and around us. People used to ask me in many seminars, but what is the need of this? We are having a Vice Admiral rank officer there and a whole lot of staff, and we have 2 survey ships. Now we have 14 survey ships in our force. Why are they doing everything? To run a survey ship of that kind is costing about 5 lakh per day. Where is the necessity? Well, necessity is, if you look at it, I will not give you the details, but then 5 islands which emerged subsequently 47 onwards, we put our flag there, and had we not been very alert on this, probably somebody else would have done it. The idea of that is the moment you put that, the exclusive economy survey gets extended for your benefit. Now you would ask me, where is the necessity of all this? Now comes the relations. Relative things are blue economy, fisheries, minerals, a lot of other things which are there related to sea has become important now, and that's why every country wants to have a control of this. This is this side of the story, that what way we are going to be controlling sea. Now look at the other side. There were trade routes, Panama, Suez Canal, they are no longer important to the extent they were earlier, but now Indian Ocean has become the busiest trade route. Things have changed. So we need to have better control, which we are having now, and we are surging towards that direction. This is the side of the sea. You will say hydrodiplomacy. Why only sea you are talking about? You are mentioning only about this. The idea is that it is not only sea, it is the rivers which are equally important. Now we have started looking at it of late. 1947, we were not bothered about it because there was enough water. There was not enough productivity of crops. Population was not that much. So we were not bothered whether Pakistan is taking more water or we are taking more water. Rivers were flowing. That's about it. We did have agreements on this. There are international bodies which will regulate all this. When Bangladesh came up, we never bothered about how much they are going to take and how much we are going to take. 1971, we entered into a lot of agreements with them, and periodically we are having agreements. And Farakka barrage that we made, we contributed very richly towards it, towards the development of this. Never ever we bothered to take something in return in writing. Well, we are doing it as a bigger brother, and that's about it. It was a generosity of the highest kind. We did that. India and Nepal is having common borders, common rivers. Mrs. Barua has already talked about Kosi. We never bothered about who is going to take what. Even in terms of excessive floods in good old days, we never bothered about it. Well, whatever comes to us, the damage control was done, and that's the way it was. Subsequently, of very late, when our population grew, when we started increasing our production of rice and other related crops, we started getting the importance of water. And we never controlled these rivers. We had agreements, but we were taking it very loosely. That okay, this exists. On paper, whenever there is a requirement, we'll do it. Subsequently, of late, very recently, we have started realizing they are important. Now we are bothered about that even 1 million cusics, if it goes to the other side, it makes a substantial difference to us. This is where the importance of this topic comes in, and this is where the hydro diplomacy takes a very frontal seat now, and we need to look at it. And how do we look at it? Do you think if I read a lot of books or Mr. Lama comes up with a lot of papers on this, would be looked into? No. It is unless young minds like you who take up the issues after hearing people in such seminars, after reading literature out of some such seminar, that you start working on it and you start thinking about it. Do you think these organizations like G20 or India's foreign policies or India's standing in the world scenario has come up in one day? No. It is the dint of hard work of our diplomats that they have worked day in and day out towards strengthening our country in various adverse circumstances, in terms of war, in terms of natural calamities, in terms of COVID, in terms of sharing of the resources. All this was shared, and ultimately they came out with an axiom that our foreign policy towards the world is going to be what is in our interest. The moment we started harboring on that, people realized that yes, India has a meaningful role, and what they are contributing is going to be the real axiom of the world, and if that is looked into, probably things will be better sorted out in terms of in terms of the interest of the universe as one family, one earth, one policy, one universe. If we look at from that point of view, the feeling of sharing will come in. The other thing, when we looked at sea, which was not there in early 40s and early 50s in good old days, was the mineral wealth which is there. We never bothered about it. It's of late, during Ukraine war, people realized well, lithium is very important. Yes, it is. But did we ever bother before that? No. It was being supplied, we were all taking. This also comes from the river belt. Very few would know. If somebody researches on this, India has huge amount of manganese under sea around it. And not only manganese, if you look at it, it has 7 rare elements along with those alloys. If that we extract, who is going to extract? Do you think I'm going to do it or any naval officer is going to do it? No. It is through research projects. Somebody gave a research project now on harnessing this manganese out of these sea beds. It is being done, but from a different perspective now. So all these things, if we can harness and if we can generate enough lithium and other rare earths, I think it's a rich wealth I'll be getting. Where am I going to get it from? From these resources in and around me. So that's the one which you young minds will have to work out and think about it. And if you think about it, probably you will give a real direction to this. An organization, ICWA, you would have not heard of. Probably you would have heard about it that yes, there is something that exists. The research committee of that would meet once in a year and they'll say, well, okay, one project to this and one project to that. That's about it. Now onwards, they have started thinking that give a project which are more relevant to this. The moment that has started, people started working on it and people started writing research papers, books. So what I'm trying to tell you is that hydro diplomacy has assumed a great role in the present day scenario. And if we are not waking up now, maybe 10 years from now, it's not a long enough time in the world scenario, you will find that our neighbors would take a larger chunk of resources which should come to us, and then we'll be just trying nothing else. Why not sit across and share? Why not do this diplomacy? And I'm glad that they have started thinking about diplomacy in South Asia, which is more important. Of late, people have started thinking, this is the feeling which goes around in UNO bodies as well, that this is an area which is very important in the years to come. Here, if you look at the population, universities, growth of universities, students' population, research areas, they are doing wonders. And everybody is now thinking that this is the force, eastern side, Korean, Japanese, all put together. This is the side which is working and it's going to be a force to reckon with. So this side they have now started bothering, which was not the case earlier. Last 80 years, if you look at, maybe 100 years, what has Europe come up with? Nothing. Americans are doing because we are working there. But that side is receding in importance. What is emerging is this side of the world where we are there. SAARC is there, Southeast Asia is there, Eastern Bloc is there. So this hydro diplomacy would become an equally important area to work on, to think about, and what best way to work on this. We have a lot of problems, and this is what you will find during the next 3 years, next 3 days. I was going through the topics. You will find areas like Indo-Nepal, Indo-Japanese, Indo-Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, India, all those neighboring countries would share, and it is through diplomacy that we can get the best out of the existing resources. That is the need of the hour. I am a bigger brother, I cannot bully Maldives that look, I am the one, you have to listen to me. No, Maldives has one vote, United States has one vote. So this is the way world diplomacy works. So we need to sit across and sort out our solutions. This is what we need to do, and this is where this hydro diplomacy, the very right topic is an approach to the regional cooperation in Southeast Asia. If we look at this from these kind of seminars and these kinds of thinking, certain ideas will emerge, which probably the concerned authorities would look at, okay, they are suggesting this, probably we'll also write a paper and send it to them, which we have been doing regularly to External Affairs Ministry. They will think that, well, this is the solution, probably we need to work on this. This is where, as I've been highlighting repeatedly, young minds become very, very important. And these young minds would be the ones who will write projects, take leaf out of this, take the help from Professor Mahendra Lama, who's been working on this, and from Asia Foundation. I'm sure they are here to help you in the best of ways. If you work on this, probably it will not be a help to you alone. You will be helped because your degrees, you will get a good degree, you will get good placements, you will get good fellowships, all that you will be helped. But in the process, what is more important is that the whole region would be helped, which is the need of the hour. So please take this seminar seriously, listen to the talks, interact with the experts who are giving it, and we would have achieved our right objective. I am very happy and grateful at the same time to Sikkim University and IIT Guwahati, Asia Foundation, and our own colleagues who have come forward to organize a seminar of this kind. This is a beginning. We have held 3-4 earlier also, but I hope it continues, and it is through this continuous process we'll come out with the best solutions, one of cooperation, one of coexistence, one of spirit of helping one another. That would go a long way, rather than I bullying Bangladesh or I showing red eyes to Pakistan will not help. So this is what is needed. Work on it, interact with the experts, come out with the best ideas, and this seminar will give you a direction that what area to carry out your research in. Very interesting area it is, and you need to keep your eye on it so that it helps you and you help us. That's the right philosophy in which we are existing. So thank you very much, Mr. Lama, Mrs. Barua, and all others who have come here to organize this. Let me finally assure you that Pondicherry University here is there to cooperate, to help you in the best possible ways. Whatever best we can do, it will be there. Kindly continue your efforts so that our whole area becomes an area which the world will look at that this is the way to develop. Thank you very much for inviting me, and God bless all of you. I wish this seminar a grand success.
Thank you, sir. The Vice Chancellor has rightly pointed out the concerns about rivers and population of the subcontinent and the importance of policy building on hydro diplomacy in a country's foreign policy. It is always a pleasure to have you with us, sir. I thank you again for your encouraging words. Now, I would like to invite Professor Mahendra Lama of Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, to express his remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University, Professor Gurmeet Singh, the head of Asia Foundation in India, Madam Nandita Barwaju, Professor Subramaniam Raju, the director and the dean here, the faculty of Sikkim University, all of them are very well known to me, Professor Uttam, Professor Salvin, Professor Sebastian, Professor Newton, and the faculty members of Pondicherry University. Our very dear friend, Professor Nandita Barua, Professor Anamika Barua from IIT could not make it, but he has sent 3 very young, bright students to participate in the seminar. Then we have the presence of Professor Jayanta Basu, Professor Lawrence Prabhakar, Professor Jafar Ali, and also a representative from Asia Foundation office looking after the hydro diplomacy issue, that is Ms. Apurva Singh, and my dear students and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me profusely thank Professor Gurmeet Singh for taking out his time and telling us what really should be the agenda. Absolutely brilliant, sir. Thank you very much for placing all these agenda in place. And I'm sure these young scholars would be tremendously inspired and benefited by what you just said so eloquently. And I would also like to, to really, recognize the presence of Madam Nandita Barua, precisely because she is outside the university system, but so deeply integrated with the university system through various means, including on issues related to water governance in South Asia, and a host of issues. Thank you, Madam Nandita Barua, for your presence there. And the host here, the real host, the South Asia Center, is of tremendous value to all of us. As I was telling Professor Raju, Professor Purusothaman, that this is possibly the only center in South Asia that really brings together South Asian students in real sense of the term. Like in JNU, yes, we have a very old South Asia Center, but we are not able to bring students from all over South Asia because of these reasons or that reasons. When we talk about, give me just about 7 to 8 minutes. When we talk about hydro diplomacy, you have two very interesting components in it. One is water, the other one is diplomacy. And it is not only about water. Water, the multi-dimensions, the multi-disciplines, the multi-linearity part of water. Water livelihood, water food security, water related to your culture, religious feelings, right? So many things water is related to. And diplomacy is also not related to two bureaucrats, two diplomats doing diplomacy for a country like India, because both these themes carry in them the four major ingredients of a national policy. And the four major ingredients of a national policy is your national sovereignty. Then your second is your national interest. And third is your national identity. And the fourth, very significant, is national power. So these four components actually drive your entire international relations, foreign policy, diplomacy, right? So that means every time you would like to be successful in your diplomacy, all these four factors should converge in such a manner that it really leads you to something meaningful, something big for your, in terms of your national gains. So that is, and please remember, this is done since international relations are conducted with another country, vis-a-vis other countries, so they also have their four ingredients in their foreign policy. They also would like to assert their national identity, right? They would also, proliferate in terms of national power. So you can imagine that you have countervailing forces this side, you have forces this side, you have other kind of varieties of forces in other countries. So everything should match, right? If you would really like to kind of achieve something substantive diplomatically. So the question here for all of us is, you have been taught, right, or we have been teaching students about various theoretical dimensions of international relations. Some would talk about realist paradigm, some of them would say liberal paradigm, some Marxist paradigm, constructivist school, all kinds of things, right? We will talk about it. So the question here is, would these theories which you have been taught in the classroom or which we have been teaching really converse with the realities in the global world or realities in the conduct of diplomacy is a big question, right? And that is where we would like to fill the gap. As Nandita Barwaju rightly mentioned, that we should go beyond what you see, right? For example, if you see what is happening in this region or in even other geographies in the world, you will find that one very important factor that has really dislocated this convergence of these four national interests, national power, national sovereignty, and national identity, dynamics and matrix, one important factor which has really dislocated them is something like what you call now resource nationalism. There's nothing like, you have a religious nationalism, you have a ethnicity-based nationalism, you have a history-based nationalism, but a new phenomenon of nationalism has started emerging in a big way, in a very perceptible way, and that is what you call resource nationalism. That means Then the question is, what is resource nationalism? At the heart of resource nationalism is a particular resource. It could be water, it could be forests, it could be wild animals, it could be minerals, it could be oil, it could be anything, right? But here in South Asia, resource nationalism for us, one of the most critical factors is, of course, water, right? And what is resource nationalism? I am only flagging this point because we are going to have a much more substantive discussion on this. Resource nationalism is something like, I have this particular resource, and I would like to have a total control over these resources. And it's not a total control, it is an absolute control over these resources. That means wherever I direct these resources, it should go there. Whenever I would like to exploit or harness them, it should be under total my supervision. But the water does not stick to a particular geography. It flows through geographies, right? The moment it flows through geographies means you have two options. Either you sacrifice your national control over this water, or you, as Professor Gurmeet Singh rightly mentioned, or you share, you cooperate, you coexist in sharing this water, right? Now, the moment you go for the second option, that is, I would like to share, then the country would say, oh, I'm sharing this water with this particular country. Yeah, till yesterday I had a total control over it. And in the name of cooperation, I'm giving this much of cusecs of water to this particular country, right? So I start connecting this loss of control, loss of national control over your natural resources to your identity and sovereignty. That means, oh, it is eroding my identity and it is eroding my sovereignty. And the moment it erodes your sovereignty, you have that feeling, you tend to withdraw from the cooperation process, right? And when you tend to withdraw from the cooperation process, you withdraw in the name of resource nationalism, right? I have this, and then the country would give a voting to your government because I have highlighted resource nationalism. Now see, please, this has started happening to the Chinese projects in Africa, to the Chinese projects in Latin America. We have seen in South Asia this is happening for last 3 decades, but it has come up in a much more strident and conspicuous manner. And this resource nationalism is not geography-centric or a nation-centric. It could be a small, state-centric also. Say, for example, in Pakistan, Balochistan is the place where you have got all natural gas and oil reserves, right? So Balochistan as a province would say to the Chinese, hey, you have your China-Pakistan economic corridor project in Pakistan, but we will not allow you to really harness this project, right? Precisely because we will lose something as a province. So this is what you call regional parochialism within a particular country. We have seen that in South India in terms of Kaveri water dispute. Or we have seen in Bengal in terms of Tista projects. We have seen in Nepal in terms of number of other projects. So please remember this. So that means what? That means you have second layer of diplomacy to be used, right? At the first level, you have a national level, and you have at the state level, you have a state level. So and does our conventional diplomacy or the instruments of diplomacy or the institutions of diplomacy would be able to cope up with this new phenomenon? I find Africans are finding it very difficult. I find even Pakistanis are finding it difficult. We in India, right, we find it so difficult precisely because despite the federal government wanting to cleanse the Tista river, sharing with Bangladesh, we are not able to do precisely because Bengal government says no. The third layer would come, right? Say for example, Tista, almost more than 70% of Tista will flow through Sikkim. And if tomorrow Sikkim asserts that in the entire Tista negotiation process, more than Bengal, we should be responsible in advising government of Sikkim on how to negotiate TISTA, what would happen. So layers and layers of diplomacy are there. And we have seen that in Mekong river cases. The third very important thing I would like to say is, when you deal with a particular resource and do diplomacy, you do with vis-a-vis a particular country. And you can't do what you call it Indus or Brahmaputra, right? Yarlung Sangpo. You can't do diplomacy only on Yarlung Sangpo, only on what you call Indus. Both of them, of course, originate in China, right? But when you do diplomacy, when you study as young diplomats, you'll have to really understand what is happening in China. You really have to study that, the geography, the sociological aspects, the ecological, the cultural ecology aspects of it, you really have to know. Otherwise, you will not be able to do some. That's what we do in the classroom. We go to the field, bring fresh knowledge, come back to the classroom and tell students, look, this is what is happening in Southeast. I'm going to show you some of my slides to what is happening in China, because I taught there and visited Kailas Mansarovar Lake through that when I went to the origin of Indus, origin of Brahmaputra. Amazing what is really happening. We are not able to capture how the entire diplomacy needs to be transformed in that. So it is a substantive, what you call knowledge base, which you really have to explore in the course of Heidelberg project. But what is very important for all of us is changing the orientations of our programs in the university system. Make our programs as interdisciplinary as possible, right? Water is not an engineering idea alone, right? Water is not idea about something about hydrological and environmental flows alone, but water has multi-dimensional aspects of it. How do you capture it? That means in a classroom, a sociology student, in Sikkim University, when we used to have a winter sojourn program in winter, because we have 2 months of winter holidays. And our students would go back, teachers would go back. As a young child in Darjeeling, I had a tough problem. 2 months of winter holidays, what do I do? Right? And we'll do all kinds of skating, all kinds of this and that. 2 months was so difficult to spend, and that too, it is so cold. So when we started running the operations of doing the operational aspects of Sikkim University, we said no, these 2 months we'll utilize in a much more fruitful and effective manner. So all the faculty members of physics, chemistry, history, geography, English, economics, botany would study, along with the students from this, would study water, right? Just water. Go to sea water, TISTA, and analyze TISTA water from your own perspectives. And by the time they come back with a report, then you suddenly realize, TISTA water is not only for irrigation or for drinking, or for some religious purpose. The microbiologists would bring it totally. The microbiological aspects of physics would bring this aspect. Chemistry students would sociology, anthropology. Then you'll suddenly realize one theme is water. But look at the knowledge base. Look at the spread of its influence, right? And this is what we have to do in the classroom also. So Asia Foundation very well visualized that this is what is going to happen in future, right? And we have very absolutely brilliant partners. Professor Gurmeet Singh, IIT director, right? Sikkim University vice chancellor. So they all came together and started doing this course. So I'm sure we are going to have good 1.5 day discussions on what are the emerging trends on hydro diplomacy. And I wish you all the best for this success of this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening words on an array of issues on hydrodiplomacy, national interest, components of foreign policy, trajectories of classroom teaching and reality, and especially on resource nationalism of South Asia and China. Your words will resonate with us for a long time. With that, we come to the end of our inaugural session. Once again, I express my gratitude for the honorable guests and dignitaries for joining us. We have ahead of us 2 technical sessions and 3 panel presentations, duly followed by discussions. Each session sheds light on critical issues and fosters open and constructive dialogues. I solicit your continued presence in our sessions ahead.